Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Dear friends, this is Farooq Mirza, your host, 4 Pillar TV USA, USA's program, Washington Global Forum. Uh, I welcome Professor Dr. Ghulam Mujtaba. He is a orator, uh, philosopher, and writer, and he is a doctor, PhD doctor, community activist. And he has a definite role in Pak-US relationship building, different alliances, and now he is a part of foreign policy as well. So we will ask him uh, questions on new Pak-US relations. Uh, 1 year has been completed in interim government in Afghanistan, and changing political scenario in the whole region in South Asia. And especially, we will talk to him about a recent visit of CENTCOM commander Michael Eric. Recently, he met with the General Bajwa. So there are a lot of things people they are discussing. And let's go to the straight questions. Dr. Saab, uh, as you know, uh, Pakistan and America has a historical relationship for a long-term relationship. Then the military U.S. military to military relationship with Pakistan established in a very strong way, and send up withdrawals of U.S. troops from Afghanistan. So Pakistan earned a lot of respect, uh, being a part of a peace treaty between Afghan and the U.S. Then now America is not in the region, and recently the high-level commander, SETCOM commander, he has recently met with General Bajwa, and he did not meet with any civil uh, leadership in Pakistan. So I want to know: is it a beginning of new military to military relationship between Pakistan and USA, or just shifting military policies?
Thank you
Or
very
you?
much. Thank you very much, Mr. Farooq Mirza. Your contributions and the contributions of your TV program and channels in the YouTube and in the social media and overall media of Pakistan is a great contributor to this relationship between the United States and Pakistan. And we appreciate this relationship from both ends. On this side of the Atlantic, that means the Pakistani Americans, US Congress, US government, and the US political and social system appreciates that. And also, it is well admired by the people living in Pakistan. Perceptions are not always the realities. In real life, there are so many things that you create a perception on certain thing that may not be a reality. The common perception between the Pakistan and the United States relationship over the years had been very damaging. A lot of anti-American sentiments have been developed in the last many decades. And those perceptions are, in fact, not realities while we live in the US as Pakistani Americans. We know the reality of the matter is very different from the perceptions in amongst the people of Pakistan. Now, coming to this relationship precisely, which you talked about the military and military relationship, in order to understand this fact, I have done my PhD on Pakistan's military and Pakistan's civilian leadership from a US university. And my thesis was widely published on this relationship. And being a scholar on the subject itself, I must tell you that the realities are very different from my audience who are listening to us from this side of the Atlantic. These perceptions certainly are antithesis to what they have developed in their minds. And we will come precisely into that based on the targets that you have given between military and, of Pakistan and the military of the US. This is very delicate. Pakistan's relationship with the United States dates back to the days Pakistan came into existence. The US president sent first message to Qaid Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah. Congratulations on the independence of Pakistan. That was 15th of August in Pakistan and 14th of August in the US because of the time zone difference of 10 hours between Washington and Islamabad at that time. US opened its embassy in Karachi when Karachi was the capital on 14th August 1947. On 15th August 1947, US embassy was opened in Karachi. It started functioning in Karachi. That is a historical fact. Since then, the Sito-Sento agreements, the NATO agreements, and the defense agreements between the Pakistan's armed forces and the armed forces of the United States has a long, unwavering history. Pakistan has had been a strong ally of the United States for years after years. The time of Ayub Khan, you can see on the YouTube those clips when he was welcomed by the President of the United States. And that huge welcome was received on the streets of the United States for Ayub Khan. Now, there were other factors that contributed to that. Those factors at the time of General Yahya Khan, when Pakistan had to give up East Pakistan, which became independent as Bangladesh, the US Secretary of State, Henry Kissinger, is on record saying, asking the Chinese president to intervene and open skirmishes at Tibet in the region so India could get involved, engaged in there, and pressure on Pakistan, on East Pakistan, will diffuse or
Doctor,
defuse.
this is a historical background. It's a very important to know to the audience. I want to come back to the question. Pakistan did a lot, sacrificed a lot, and fought a war against terrorism and become the a firewall against terrorism and save the world. And now, what else the U.S. expects from Pakistan at this point? Usually, we were expecting immediate relief uh, or immediate assistance from the U.S. and other European allies in flood reliefs. As you know that 60% Pakistan is under flood damage. What is the purpose of this meeting? Recently, these commanders they get together. My question is that is it a beginning of a new relationship, and what kind of relationship would be
The
that?
relationship,
Specifically, that would be a military-to-military relationship, or they will also restore civil relationship with Pakistan.
we have to keep in mind that the military and military relationship is between the GHQ and Pentagon, mostly, in most cases. And this relationship has never been broken. There had never been gaps in this relationship between GHQ and Pentagon. There has had been engagements throughout the years. So there's no question of any new relationship. Yes, it is a reinforcement of an already existing relationship between Pakistan and the United States. And now, why did the question that you're coming and trying to zero in is why did the Central Command or CENTCOM commander visit Pakistan? Yes, the answer is General Bajwa called CENTCOM when Pakistan was going into bankruptcy and IMF was not releasing funds to Pakistan. There were a lot of hue and cry in Pakistan because Pakistan was at the brink of a collapse, economic collapse, and Pakistan needed some sort of support. We have to understand one thing. The IMF Board of Governors is headed by the Treasury Secretary of the United States. In this country, Treasury Secretary means Finance Minister of the US in Pakistani terms. Treasury Secretary cannot be called by the GHQ or the Chief of the Army to intervene and give relief or concessions to Pakistan economic concessions. Now, there was a credibility of the armed forces within the US system. There was no credibility of the political leadership in Pakistan. In the deficiency of that leadership, the Pakistan Army commander had to call Pentagon, had to call CENTCOM, whom he was dealing for years, and then CENTCOM responded that call this fellow the Deputy Secretary of State, which is Foreign Affairs. Deputy Secretary of State is Deputy Foreign Minister of the United States. And then he called the Deputy Secretary of the State after getting approval from Pentagon, which is the right method of approaching this foreign office. And then she was the one who took the notes and handed over to the administration, and the Treasury Secretary was involved in putting an approval, US approval, to the loans, IMF loans that Pakistan was expecting. Now, in this case, I must make it very clear that there were Pakistani Americans, which included myself, who approached the Treasury Secretary and who approached the administration to influence the administration and give an approval on into the IMF loans. And we are happy to see that this thing happened in Pakistan, and it has not been announced as yet, but the things are in the pipeline, and the US tacit approval to IMF funds are there. Now, the question is, why military? Because military leadership is the only credible institution amongst the leadership of the US to be counted on. So it was counted, it was given a respect, and the Deputy Secretary of State recommended the
Sir,
commanders.
you want to tell me and to the audience that the Bajwa diplomacy or Bajwa influence or Bajwa doctrine works in this regard for
Absolutely,
for
absolutely.
sanctioning this IMF loan. So
Yes,
if
there
it
are
is the
no.
if this is the case, then where the civil government stand for, and they were trying to communicate with the IMF. So if there is a military influence involved, so it means in Pakistan the power game will remain in like within the military. So it also means that every time or every year, whenever the IMF and other financial matters will be on the way or Pakistan would be in a crisis, so the military leadership will be the only that the Pakistan will rely on. Do you think is it right for the democracy, or is it right for the military leadership to involve in a financial civil matters?
Very good question, Mr. Mirza. Let me tell you, why is there a deficiency or trust deficit for civilian leadership across the globe? What is the reason? King of Saudi Arabia do not trust the civilian leadership. The UAE ruler do not trust the civilian leadership. The Britishers do not trust civilian leadership. The Americans do not trust civilian leadership. Now you have to go back and look to the process of transparency in leadership. What are the reasons behind this trust deficit across the globe? Why global leaders do not trust Pakistan's political leadership? Why do they have to rely on the military leadership of the US? It has got nothing to do with democracy. It has got to do with credibility. Now, the question is, how many of Pakistan's civilian leadership are involved in corruption of US aid into Pakistan, are involved in corruption to American aid into Pakistan? And why so? Do you think those things appearing on the in the internet on those corruptions are not available to CIA and are not available to FBI and are not accessible to the President of the United States or members of the Congress? No. Someone has to be fooled to understand that the Congress members do not know what people in Pakistan sitting on the internet know. Yes, we know those facts which are readily available on the internet. We have more information than that. We have information on their accounts in UAE. We have information on their account on Arif Naqvi. We have information on their account on so many things. What things have been going on, and why democracy could not control transparency.
Dr. You are very much right. I cannot deny on that. But at the same time, I would like to say the right now existing situation in Pakistan, there is a political and the economical crisis and judicial crisis in Pakistan. On one side, the military leadership is standing, and on one side, the civil, and the third party is combating, threatening, blaming at, and at the same time, with the same specific reason, the America is also blamed at. So, if the civil government, parliament, and other institutions they are not involved, they are a part and parcel of military relationship in Pakistan. How can you expect a transparency if the Americans they will deal with the military and they will stay at distance with the civil governments? Then whatever the expenditures and whatever the money given or grants, so who will be accountable for that?
There's no question about it that the US wants a progressing democracy in Pakistan. There's no question about it that the
What
president.
what is the new? My question, the first question was that was the is it a beginning of new relationship, and what would be the base of these relationship, and where all these military or counter-terrorism or uh, uh, the different bilateral relationship between the military to military relationship, where they will use it. There is no issue in the Afghanistan. The Afghanistan these interim Afghan government they just completed 1 year today. It's not legitimate. I will ask you a question on this one too. Is it a new uh, kind of relationship to deal with Afghanistan or deal with the Afghan government? They are expecting that they might prolong their interim period for another 5 years. And this is the only government in the world that is not legitimate, not recognized. Do you think some kind of discussions or some kind of new programs or some kind of new decisions were made to deal with Afghanistan?
See, the point is, so far US is concerned, US is more concerned about terrorism that is spread all over the globe because of activities in Afghanistan and what Al Qaeda did previously, and how the UN resolution in 2002 was passed unanimously. So the question is legitimacy. Yes, we want a legitimate government in Afghanistan, both as Pakistanis as Americans. We want a peaceful region, and we do not want threat to other parts of the world. Dirty bombs could be made, and those dirty bombs could be used anywhere. Suicidal bombs can be made, and suicidal attempts can be done everywhere. So there is a threat, and that threat has to be dealt. It is not a dead threat. It is not something that is not alive today. Yes, it is very much alive today. And when we hear that someone goes to Kabul and celebrates Fateh Mubin on the in Serena Hotel in Kabul, then certainly sitting here as Pakistani Americans, we are concerned that look, there is another incident that may come up when the Pakistan's national security advisor comes on the press and says that there is a chance of 9/11 to happen again, and that is on record, although he denied that. So these things, and then after that, Pakistan's political leadership comes in and says that America has conspired to throw me out of the government, which is baseless. We know these things were created for certain objectives. And what were those objectives in the American eyes? The target was to defame the US, bring a street protest in US in Pakistan, and bring anti-American sentiments to peak up in Pakistan. I can give you a reference. In 1979, I was in Makkah Mukarramah myself. I was in Khana Kaaba myself. Abdullah bin Qaitani's group took over Khana Kaaba, demanding certain things that they thought is not in an approval of Sharia that is being done by the ruling government. And then he raised his voice. He brought his guns. He brought his people, armed people, inside Khana Kaaba. And it was Imam Khomeini who spoke on the radio on the BBC that Israelis and Americans have taken over Khana Kaaba. This was very sentimental thing. It incited violence in Pakistan, and that incitement led to the burning of US embassy in 1979 in Pakistan. And not only that, one marine was killed right there by the mob. This was the result of the rumor. So, perceptions, what I said in the beginning of this discussion, perceptions are not always the realities. The perceptions in Pakistan, anti American sentiments.
Let,
Imran,
Dr. Saab, let's come back to Afghanistan.
yeah, let
The-
me, I'm
yeah, okay,
coming. So
okay.
what Imran Khan did, he incited anti-American sentiments. U.S. flags were burnt in Lahore on the streets on Mall Road, and then he was trying to mend fences with Taliban, and he himself said that Taliban's government should be recognized. The fact of the matter is, 1 year now, no one recognized Taliban, and nothing happened all over the world. Controls were made, security arrangements were made. Yes, there exists a threat, and that threat does not mean that we are not ready to face the threat. The threat has to be faced, and there are institutions who will face those threats. But trying to mix up with things and collaborate with those threatening forces, that is damaging to the interest of Pakistan, that is damaging to Pakistan's political leadership, the leadership that claims makes false claims of anti-American sentiments, inciting anti-American sentiments on the streets of Pakistan is not acceptable to our policymakers in the United States.
Dr. Saab, there are two issues right now. Uh, what's going on in Afghanistan? One is an interim government is not legitimate. World is not recognizing, accepting it. You know very well. And during the course of this 1 year, we observed severe human rights violations, girls schooling. Uh, then they don't have any relationship with the rest of the world, and whatever they are doing, and they are like obstinate child, and they don't want to anybody, any other group to get in and rule over. So it means the Taliban, they will they will remain as an interim, or down the road there would be election. But right now the other issue, they don't have money. The U.S. government and other uh, allies, they have frozen their assets and their money, and they are expecting from the U.S. What do you think uh, the world should do to bring them to the table, to bring them to the light, so that they can communicate with the civilized world, and they impose certain laws, and they agree on certain principles to maintain law and order situation, to maintain human respect, and to provide women uh, a respect and the rights. So, what do you think? Do you think this recent meetings with the commanders is the beginning of a talk, some kind of talk to deal with Afghanistan?
Your second part of the question, I will agree on that because it is US concern as to what is happening in Pakistan. The infiltration of Taliban in the Swat region is a great concern for the US security agencies. And there are informations, which I will not go into the detail, that somehow or the other they managed to enter into Pakistan, and there had been cases of getting money and support somewhere from within the KPK province. And I do not know because we do not have those datas in front of us. But if something is happening that way, and if the current government of KPK is involved some way or the other with the TTP in giving money or minting money for them, this is a matter of serious concern for US. The US does not want Taliban presence in the region to be threatened in any form, and that is the US CENTCOM's concern. Now, terrorism is one of the major factors that was discussed, and I think Bajwa has played, let me make it a point here, has played a very smart game, a very smart dynamics, is very smart policy in terms of the Pakistan's armed forces. Why? I tell you. General McChrystal was the commander of NATO forces in 2013 in Afghanistan. And General Kiani was the chief of the army staff in Pakistan at that time. General McChrystal visited GHQ like the West CENTCOM commander visited Bajwa. General McChrystal visited General Kiani, and then he returned back to Afghanistan, and the Salala event took place. 14 people, Pakistan Army Armed Forces personnel were killed. Now the question is, when McChrystal was there, when he returned, what happened in between this period that Salala massacre took place? And how did that happen? What technology was used? Now, this is a very serious thing, and it is very classified, so I cannot give you the details. But certainly, I have been told by one of the former Air Force chief on the modalities as to why did this happen. And without going into those details, I tell you that the CENTCOM commander came to Pakistan and they ended up in good terms. And that is how Bajwa dealt with things. Pakistan has to understand US concerns. Pakistan has to understand that the US concerns are that OBL was in a safe house in Aptabad. OBL, money was given to capture OBL. US was involved in giving so much facilities to Pakistan and US aid, military and civilian aid to capture Al Qaeda terrorists. And that mastermind of terrorism was within Pakistan at a security zone. That created a trust deficit between Pakistani leadership and the US leadership. Although Musharraf apologized for this. He tendered an apology, and there are video clips available on the YouTube where you can see Musharraf saying that. But that does not mean that it washed out the entire episode. Now,
Dr. Saab,
looking,
this is all past.
no, no, I understand. I understand. Now we are coming to Bajwa. Bajwa is not doing such things. And when Bajwa is straight, when the general of Pakistan is straight in dealing with the US, the Pakistan will keep on getting concessions from the US, like the one with the IMF. It goes both ways. It's not cousin brother relationship. It is a relationship where what you give and what you take. It has to be balanced by both the countries. And Bajwa's dynamics in playing with the diplomacy which the civilian government is tremendous and exceptional. And I must admire that Bajwa is moving in the right direction, and we wish him luck in this.
Dr. Saab, you are very much right. Right, the General Bajwa and his doctrine that was very successful. There were two things they were working on. One is internal security of Pakistan. They cleaned up. They did a lot of work into 3 4 years, and they almost uprooted terrorism from Pakistan. Now the problem, the last problem they mentioned in a national security this big meeting last month. The only issue they have with the TTP, the Pakistani Taliban. So that was very successful. He did very well, and also he helped United States of America, NATO, and allies to withdraw this American troops from, and that he also guaranteed for the regional peace as well. He earned a lot of respect. I believe this is the only the consequence of that. The world recognized his this policy, and recently he was invited in the Royal Academy. He was given a very big hand and appreciated. Then he came to Middle East and he got two awards. So he was well regarded in the world. So now come back to Pakistan's U.S. And Pakistan's civil relationship, because Pakistan is going into a very difficult different kind of crisis. Like as I said, it's an economical crisis, political crisis, and there is a urgent need to strengthen democracy. We are going to elections, and down the road, the political process is on the way. The parties, they will be active, and if uh, any party come, I believe without military and civil relationship, they won't succeed. There would be a crazy relationship if the military and civil relationship is not maintained. So there would be a problem. So, do you think the USA will consider its policy to deal with military and civil government on the same level?
This is a very difficult question, Mr. Farooq Mirza Saab. The thing is, civilian leadership have to build up the level of confidence that the armed forces has built up in relationship with Pentagon, and that is vital. If you say something and you don't know how to manage that, and you do not have any substantive proof on that, and you blame the United States and keep on doing so in order to please China or in order to please Iran, that may serve your domestic interest. That may serve your vote bank in Pakistan. There could be a vote bank which could serve the rogue state's interest in Pakistan. But that vote bank is detrimental to Pakistan's national security interest. Pakistani leadership have to come up to the stage and tell the truth to the people of Pakistan. One thing we clearly know as politicians of Pakistan that Pakistan has had been a recipient of US aid, not loan to Pakistan. China has given loan to Pakistan, and that loan is substantiated by interest each year that makes a compound interest on deferred payments. America gave aid to Pakistan that was never to be repaid. There is a huge difference between giving aid and loans to Pakistan. Pakistan has gone into a debt trap of China. It is very hard for Pakistan, with the current environment, economic environment, to come out of the debt trap. You have seen the results of Sri Lanka. What happened to them? They were in the debt trap of China. And there are other countries who are moving in the same direction. We have to understand that debt trap is not an answer to Pakistan's national security interest. Pakistan's national security interest lies with the United States and the allies of the United States. There is no one, including Saudi
But then
Arabia.
again, there is a question of sovereignty. The Pakistan is an independent country, and the Pakistan want to make their own decision. That was the problem. Do you think the Imran Khan and the U.S. Relationship come to that point due to the very reason? The Imran Khan uh, he said many times that they will not take any dictation, they will not give up their land, airspace, and they will not say yes to anything. So I will ask you a very straight question. Do you think Pakistan has a right to be an independent and sovereign country and have their own decision? Or the second question, what was the problem of Imran Khan with the USA? What do you think? What happened?
Okay, your first question, is Pakistan a sovereign nation? Who has doubts in that? If Pakistan was not a sovereign nation, how come Chinese submarine is standing at Gwadar? Is it America's tacit approval? How come 44 years lease to China has been given at Gwadar? Is that American approval? Is that an American dictation? No. These are Pakistan's independent judgments. It has got nothing to do with sovereignty of Pakistan. Pakistan's sovereignty has never been compromised on American interest. Has Pakistan been given a place at Gwadar or Karachi port to put Tomahawk missiles there with the submarines? No. So why would you say that America is damaging the sovereignty of Pakistan when Chinese submarine is standing right there in Gwadar, and the fishermen who used to have their bread and butter, their own bread and butter from Gwadar port, are being denied access to their own waters? Is that Pakistan's sovereignty? What is happening in Swat? Who is taking out the minerals and precious metals in Swat? What is happening in Balochistan? Those are real facts. Is that sovereignty compromised because of China? When it comes to China, there is no sovereignty. And where is America involved in those places? Can you tell me, can you name a single place where America is involved? No. America is not involved in challenging Pakistan's sovereignty. America has no interest in that. America is involved in upkeeping its hegemony in the region. That's very much genuine. America is a world power. America has to maintain its hegemony. That does not mean that America is going at Gwadar and putting the submarines there. That's
Dr.
that's
Sab, Dr.
there's
Sab,
no,
uh,
no, now the second thing, the second part of the question is why did Imran Khan do all of this? Imran Khan thinks that he has been removed by the power corridors, those who brought him to power, and in order to deal with them, he has to use the popularity base in Pakistan, it is very easy for a political leader to start taunting the America, to start speaking against America, inspiring people against the US interests, and that works to get popularity. He used a cheap method of using popularity, baseless notions, baseless remarks, baseless rumors that America is involved in dismantling his government. That was not true. Where was
But
that
he
true?
said,
What was the
but
basis that
he said many times loud on a public level in his public gathering, that he's not against against America. He want to establish a good relationship with America. And recently, as a matter of fact, the PTI hired a PR firm, and this firm used to campaign against Pakistan's nuclear program. Do you think by hiring the PR publicity promotional this firm in Washington DC will melt ice, and USA will consider PTI or specifically Imran Khan and his role in politics in Pakistan? You know that he met with the Congresswoman Alham, then he met with the US ambassador, he met with uh, different, he sent many invites to different congressmen, and even his political party based in USA, they were in communicating with different high level leadership in Congress. So they are trying to build a relationship. So what do you think down the road there would be a kind of understanding or relationship to move on in future?
you have asked so many questions in a single spell. Mr. Farooq Mirza, you have expressed so many things, and that is very interesting. Now, coming to the last part first, would he be able or would he succeed in rebuilding a relationship with the US? The answer is no. Once tested, should not be tested against again. He is the one who incited people to burn American flags at Mall Road, Lahore. He is the one who incited people to go against US interests. He is the one who did that at a time when Pakistan still is a hotbed of terrorism because of the presence of TTP and Taliban in Pakistan and in neighboring Afghanistan. And with given those threats, Pakistani people or Pakistani nation should not be incited based on rumors to stand up against US interests. We remember the case of 1979 again, and remember the murder of a US Marine in 1979 based on Imam Khomeini's rumors. These rumors are unacceptable at world stage, and Imran Khan has committed a global crime by inciting people against US on a false notion. I challenge him, and I repeat, I challenge him in any court of law to give a statement against me and bring me to the court of law that he has a paper and a proof that the US has conspired to dismantle his government. This is rubbish. There's no such evidence available at all. And that means that Pakistan's national security is unaware of those facts which he is aware of. Where are those facts? And the Pakistan's ambassador who concocted any story, if there is one, he is responsible for these things himself. He worked for Imran Khan, and we all know that these things are not acceptable in a society like ours. Now, inciting people is a bigger crime. It's like attempt to murder, attempt to kill people, attempt to take an action against national security of the US. This is not acceptable and cannot go unpunished.
Dr. Saab, after the election, if PTI will come back to power, then how USA will deal with him in future? Uh,
US, USA is not going to deal with PTI. USA will keep on dealing with any government that is elected by the people of Pakistan. In case if the PTI wins the election and becomes part of the government, US will deal with this as a sovereign nation, and it is the choice of the people. US is dealing with Iran also. US is dealing with other countries who are anti-American, The US is dealing with Syria also, and US is dealing with an unrecognized government of Afghanistan also on the situation on ground. So US
Lots
will.
of another question related to the same subject. The Election Commission of Pakistan gave a decision and clearly uh, blamed at the PTI for receiving millions of dollars from the Abraj group. Now the money is like marked, that's sitting in PTI account, and they are going to confiscate it. If it happened down the road, do you think the U.S. corporate companies they are claiming that the Abraj group they looted and the money is sitting in Pakistan in PTI accounts, they will claim back?
I think the US corporations who gave funds to Abraj Group and the money is sitting there, there is no such international law that can be expatriated, to my understanding. Now, the question is if Abraj chairman Arif Naqvi is prosecuted in the US and he makes up a deal, I think he will go for out of court settlement. And if there is an out of court settlement, then certainly it will be the details on those settlement as to how to deal with the money that the US corporations have given to Abraj. And that has got nothing to do with individual judgments. It will go through the court of law, and it is in the process of law.
Dr. Saab, thank you very much for your time. Uh, Dear friends, we talk about Pakistan and USA military relation, military to military relation. We also talk about a civil relationship. Uh, the main focus was a changing political scenario in the region, regional peace, security, and stability. Uh, so
Why
we,
don't, if you have time, why don't we come to a very important subject which we are missing here? And is your time over, or is there more time?
oh, we have a still time, sir. Go ahead, sir.
Okay, the most important question that I think we should ask each other for our audience to understand is what is the solution to all this problem? It's a big problem. It's a huge
That
problem. It's a
that
very
the
complicated.
that question I asked you in the beginning.
Yes. So, what is the solution, and how could we resolve this problem? The
Okay,
solution, the solution to Pakistan's problem for your viewers' interest is one: Pakistan is facing an economic debacle. Pakistan don't want to become, or America, let me tell you on behalf of the US Congress members who are my friends, and a lot of them are my friends, and we have discussed, they do not want Pakistan to be a next Sri Lanka. America wishes good luck to Pakistan. America wants to help Pakistan. America wants to support Pakistan. And for that, what Pakistan needs? How can Pakistan be rescued? How could Pakistan be salvaged? How could Pakistan be given a time to breathe? $1.2 billion out of IMF is not going to solve Pakistan's problem. It is going to give a ventilator support, a vent support for the time being. But is this a sustainable solution to Pakistan's problem? No. Now, what is the sustainable solution to Pakistan's problem? We have to understand the threats that Pakistan is coming across. We have to understand the threats that the civilian government has to face now. How many times would this army general will keep on calling Pentagon to get support? It cannot happen all the time. Yes, it could happen one time. It could happen two times. It happened in Imran Khan's time when General Bajwa went to UAE and went to Saudi Arabia and got some money for them. It is not going to happen all the time. And Pakistanis have to understand that you have to stand on your foot. You have to be on your footings. And you have to have a sustainable policy, not keep on getting loans and then compound interest on those loans. What is the solution? The solution is two things. First, the manufacturing units in Pakistan has to be established to a level where Pakistan's export is promoted. Now, with China having low cost production of power supplies, electricity within China, and low cost labor in China brings it at par, competitive before the world. and the products that come out of China is cheaper even in Pakistan than the Pakistani products. Now, how to deal with it? The first thing you have to do is bring power plants that is sustainable, no blackouts, no power supply shortages, and supplies to the needs of the manufacturing units in Pakistan. And that should be at a cheaper rate than China. In order to do that, let me tell you one thing, Mr. Farooq Mirza. I am on record that I brought an American delegation to Pakistan in 2013, and Hafiz Rahman was the chief minister Gilgit Baltistan, and we went for the Bhasha Dam maps, and we found out that Pakistan needs this type of money in order to establish the dam, and that dam is going to produce Pakistan power supplies more than the needs of Pakistan, more than the needs of the manufacturing units in Faisalabad, Multan, and Karachi, and all those places. And then that is going to be extra for Pakistan and much cheaper than Chinese power plants. And we offered Pakistan. And let me tell you, it's also happened before me. One of the Secretary Energies of the United States went in the Obama time to Pakistan in delegation, and they offered them to Pakistan. But because of the corrupt practices in the leadership, in the civilian leadership, they could not materialize and they could not mature. Now, my question is, at this point, we want to help Pakistan. The Secretary Treasury Energy will help Pakistan. US will give aid to Pakistan to bring dams and develop the manufacturing units in Pakistan for a sustainable economy. I can tell you that we will
That's
announce.
that's a great suggestion, and that's a great offer. What's up? What else you have?
That's one thing. The second thing is Karachi, the biggest city of Pakistan, the city that has not grown. People claim that we brought our mayor, this mayor was brought, he did tremendous work. No, when the roads were made, those were washed away after rains in 2 years. Bridges were made, there were cracks in the bridges, and that has to be done again. Now, these things are not answer to Karachi's problem. Karachi's basic problem is water. We have sea there, right there. Now, you see in Saudi Arabia, is there any water shortage in Saudi Arabia? Millions and millions of people go for Hajj and Umrah. They can open their tap waters. They keep on running the water. The ocean is not going to dry up in Saudi Arabia. It's a desalination plant that's supplying water. It's not the rivers. The same thing in UAE. It's not the rivers. There is no river in UAE. But the ocean water is being desalinated and is being supplied to the people. And there's no shortage of water. Karachi, you don't have to go from Makkah, the pipeline, to Jeddah to get seawater. You have to be in Karachi to get it desalination. No long-term running between the pipelines from Jeddah to Makkah, from Jeddah to Medina Munawwara. No. Why is desalination plant is not being put by consecutive governments in Karachi, including the local governments? This is a very big question and mark of interrogation for these people. Now, World Bank is ready to give help to Pakistan, give help for desalination plant, and why this has not been explored. We want Pakistan to be self-sufficient in power supplies and desalination plants, and that will bring new change and progressive era in Pakistan's economy. That's all.
Dr. Saab, thank you very much. All this is possible. World want to cooperate with Pakistan. The only thing is on the way is the political instability, judicial crisis, and lack of trust. One thing is very important to know that the Bajwa Doctrine works all the time. His policy was very successful. They maintained law and order situation and clean terrorism elements within the country and also secured borders. But now there is a lot of conflict and confusions with one of the political party. They are blaming it, they are cursing, and they are calling their names. It's a very unfortunate in Pakistan. The
Yes, very,
world is
very good point. Very good point you have brought up.
so
What we
down the road, all these, if there is a political stability, respect of human rights, and acceptance of or maintaining or accepting credibility of the parliament, then I think everything is possible. Dr. Saab, thank you very much. Pakistan is right now Uh, there is a very big flood damage. Almost 60% Pakistan has a flood, and the victims everywhere. Uh, so a lot of relief work is going on. The disaster management. We will pray for those who passed away, who died, drowned in floods. Uh, Thank you very much, Dr. Saab. We will come back uh, in couple of days with a new topic. Pakistan Zindabad.